Well, good afternoon, everyone. This is Michael O'Malley here at the Hurricane Outlook in the session for July 8th, 2020, recorded around 4:13 p.m. Eastern Time. We're taking a look here at the latest sea surface temperature anomalies, last updated as of yesterday, July 7th. We continue to notice this area out here in the equatorial Pacific continuing to cool off rather nicely. Again, we have had some warming as a result of a westerly wind burst that has occurred that did kind of downwell some of the warmer water and did kind of prevail it in this area. But again, overall, the signal is still for a La Nina base state by the time we get into winter, late fall and the winter of this year, and potentially continuing on to early next year. We will likely either be in a La Nina or a cool neutral. And the thing about this is that a cool neutral phase is actually more favored for the Atlantic Basin than actually a very strong La Nina. As one could imagine, a very strong onset or one of one or the other, El Nino or La Nina, can actually hinder Atlantic main development region activity. Now, one would think that a very strong La Nina would actually help. That's actually not the case. In recent studies that have been done, it's actually a cool neutral or a weak La Nina that is most favored for the Atlantic main development region. The biggest takeaway is that there will be no El Nino to speak of this year and nothing really to hinder the Atlantic Basin. Continuing on that idea, the main development region of the Atlantic Basin is continuing to warm despite some of the Saharan air events that have cooled off some of the northern Atlantic Basin here over the last few weeks or so. But for the majority, the grand majority here, the main development region is nice and toasty here with water temperatures about a half a degree to a degree Celsius above the long-term average in most spots at this point in time. Really, with the exception of this one little area out here in the main development region that's kind of north of the MDR, but still within that overall kind of square, if you will. But again, even this, you can really see this prominent horseshoe-shaped kind of curvature feeding all the way back into the subtropical Atlantic, and this is what you call a Phase 1 Atlantic multi-decadal oscillation, a positive Phase 1 AMO, as it was called. And again, this typically favors the Atlantic main development region and the southwestern Atlantic Basin, and that has really been the sign over the last few has continued to persist in its warmth. The subtropics out here that were very, very warm above the long-term average, in some cases about 5 degrees Celsius above the long-term average, that has actually cooled off a little bit. We're not seeing as strong of a signature out here in the subtropical Atlantic Basin, which is another sign that we will likely continue with this warming trend out here in the main development region, that most of the instability in the atmosphere will remain in the deep tropics, and that, we'll have to see. We've already got some really strong tropical waves, and we'll talk about that here certainly in a minute or two. But taking a look here at the upper ocean heat content updated as of this morning, again, what you're really looking for here is these, greenish and then red and dark red colors here. This is really the upper third of the scale, indicating your extremely high upper ocean heat content values. Basically, your 80-degree isotherm at depth. How deep in the ocean does it actually go? And as you can imagine, the higher you get here, the deeper down this 80-degree isotherm actually goes. And an equivalent, that's the more energy that a tropical cyclone has to take advantage of. And again, really out here in the southwestern Atlantic, the Bahamas, the Gulf of Mexico, the Caribbean, this area is just running very well above what we saw in 2017 in terms of the upper ocean heat content values. And this is quite concerning because if something does come along to take advantage of this, which we'll talk about here in a few minutes, but if something does kind of come along to take advantage of that, that really provides the clues that we will likely see a very significant system if one actually can get going down here and take advantage of this. This is very, very warm. In some cases, these are literally pushing, off the top of the scale here, basically in the upper distribution, upper fourth of the scale, that this is really trying to tip. So, a lot of these are in the upper third to upper, basically to 100% maxed out on this, especially in the Caribbean. So the biggest takeaway from that is very warm in the Caribbean, southwestern Atlantic, Gulf of Mexico. Basically everywhere I'm highlighting right here basically has enough upper ocean heat content values to support tropical cyclone formation and maintenance. And on top of that, you look out here back towards the Cabo Verde Islands, which is right over here in the main development region of the Atlantic Basin. You notice how we're actually now starting to get a lot of this, a lot of the color now starting to lift north. And we've been talking about that here over the last several weeks or so, that what's going to end up happening is we're going to start to get, as a result of the warming out here, we are going to start to see these values kind of creep up with the intertropical convergence zone lifting to the north, the consistent westerly winds that are going to be persisting, developing and persisting to help further warm the Atlantic Basin. This is really going to trigger a very strong warming of the Atlantic Basin as we continue on throughout the next several weeks or so, and this is certainly going to be something we are going to have to watch here as we continue into the month of August and beyond. So it's certainly going to be something to monitor as we go on throughout time. Now, taking a look here at the actual sea surface temperatures, this is coming off the CDAS methodology from tropicaltidbits.com, analyzed here at about 7 o'clock this morning. You notice very warm out here in the subtropical Atlantic, about 89 to 92 Fahrenheit there. Water temperatures are very, very warm for this time of the year, quite a bit above the long-term average. Notice pretty much all of this area, even out here into the main development region in the western half of the Atlantic Basin, very warm, so no doubt about that. Very well see the Gulf Stream up here, which we'll talk about a system that might be taking advantage of the Gulf Stream here in a little bit. But again, very warm up through here in the Gulf Stream, very warm in the southwestern Atlantic Basin, and it's really only a matter of time before something truly comes along and tries to take advantage of that. And we're starting to see some signs that the main development region might be kind of coming to a little bit more of a window of opportunity and opening pattern here over the next several weeks, and we'll talk about that here going down the stretch. But this is actually looking here at the NOAA NESDIS. This is the 5 kilometer, so a higher resolution sea surface temperature analysis. Basically for today, we'll kind of zoom this out here, but again, basically the upper end of the scale is 31, 32 Celsius, and you notice how the Florida Keys here off the southwestern Florida coast there, water temperature is 31 to 32 Celsius, so very warm through there. And even all throughout the Gulf of Mexico, water temperatures basically are running warm enough now to support tropical cyclones, basically running 29 to 30 Celsius in this kind of distribution. The coolest water temperature we get is actually 26.9, and that is still favorable for tropical cyclones. So everywhere in the Gulf of Mexico, every single place in the Gulf of Mexico, all of it now is favorable for tropical cyclone development in the thermodynamic sense. And if we kind of shift out here again from the CDAS methodology and we take a look here at the eastern Atlantic Basin, and again we continue to talk about how this 50 west, you noticed how we were talking about that. If you were back here following us a couple of months ago, we were talking about how this is going to extend way out here now, and it certainly has. We're starting to see these sea surface temperatures now begin to climb. The Cabo Verde Islands are kind of engulfed within that 25, 26 degree isotherm. So basically everywhere right in through here is now supportive of tropical cyclone formation in the thermodynamic sense. And as we go on throughout time, that's going to continue to evect further to the north. We're going to see that now evect further to the north, and that is going to provide a conditionally favorable environment as we head on through the month of July. And then as we continue into the month of August and September, once these tropical waves really get going out here, it is off to the races. Water temperatures, even out here in the Lesser Antilles near Barbados, 28, 29 Celsius. Water temperature is very warm. A very strong tropical wave actually passed through the Lesser Antilles and the Northern Antilles actually last night with some pretty decent winds from what the scatterometer was kind of painting that picture. So very warm waters out here, and it would not surprise me to see a cyclone or two try to develop down here, a very brief one, but certainly one that could try to develop here over the next several weeks or so as the window of favorability becomes greater over the next several weeks. Now, I'm taking a look here. This is from the College DuPage Cod Meteorology website. Taking a look at here at the broader wide eastern Pacific shot here, this is actually Tropical Storm Christina down here that is expected to become a hurricane over the next day or so, expected to become a hurricane by tomorrow morning as this generally moves off towards the west-northwest here and then eventually bending back off towards the west. But again, this is expected to be of no concern to land, but you do notice how there is some shower and thunderstorm activity right now near the Central American coastline and Mexican coastlines. This is going to be of importance over the next few days as this could dump some heavy rainfall, but again, no significant land concerns at this time. And again, just a broader view of what's going on. Again, right now, maximum sustained winds are at 60 miles per hour, pressure down to 998 millibars, and this will be becoming a Category 1 hurricane by tomorrow within the next about 24 hours with sustained winds of about 65 miles per hour as this generally heads off towards the west-northwest and eventually then bending back off towards the west-southwest here. This is no significant concern to the Hawaiian Islands, so no concern for the Hawaiian Islands. This certainly could be a little bit of a swell maker for the Cabo San Lucas resort areas over the next few days. So if you are down here in the Cabo San Lucas resort areas or the Gulf of California up through here, there could be some increased swells over the next few days. So, surfers will definitely enjoy that. But any unsuspecting beachgoers, make sure you pay attention to the beach forecast because there will be increased swells as this kind of strengthens and then turns out to sea. But otherwise than that, no significant land impacts expected with that. And this is just taking a look here at the satellite here from the RAMB website here, the regional mesoscale branch here of the National Hurricane Center and NOAA. Again, our center of circulation, we kind of trace it back here. Our old center of circulation is located in about right here, and there could be a slight center reformation further off towards the south here if any of this deeper convection can really take over. But for right now, the main center is concentrated around here. This is still battling a little bit of shear across this area. There was still some shear and drier air. You notice some of the dry air on the northwestern quadrants here that from time to time is getting wrapped around because the cyclone, you imagine how a cyclone is spinning in the northern hemisphere. A cyclone is basically bringing in air kind of going like that. So you're getting this kind of counterclockwise curvature right there, and you are pulling in some of this drier air that's kind of wrapping into the circulation and trying to get entrained from time to time. And you can really see that from an earlier satellite shot from earlier this afternoon and morning. You notice how this area was kind of devoid of any significant convection, and your higher convective bands was actually to the south because of that. Some of that shear and drier air that's actually getting entrained in the center of circulation that seems to have rebuilt its current convective structure now with some decent convective towers that are developing on either side of this low pressure system. And these convective towers will continue to rotate around, and we will likely see this kind of tighten up the circulation more and actually decrease the radius of maximum winds, which the radius of maximum winds that will kind of contract that area of low pressure and kind of tighten that off into an eye wall, and then eventually kind of be able to strengthen further as we go on throughout the next few days. But maximum sustained winds are only expected to top out here at 85 miles per hour as eventually this will encounter less favorable environment out here. And we can take a look at that basically from the upper ocean heat content values. Again, this is where our cyclone is right now, where Cristina is right now. Basically, this upper ocean heat content is pretty decent right now. It is, in the marginal side, but it is more than enough that over the next few days, this is going to allow it to strengthen a little bit more as it generally heads off towards the west-northwest here. But eventually, you notice after 48 hours, basically there is, this whole area is devoid of any significant upper ocean heat content. And the lack of any of that after the next 48 to 72 hours is really going to make a big difference. And you notice after 48 hours, this actually starts to weaken. This is kind of the hour 48 forecast here. This is hour 60. 72, 96, and 120. And you notice how this eventually will be turning away and not really providing much of any threat as this upper ocean heat content out here is very lackluster. So it will not be a very long-lived system, but will certainly probably be a hurricane and generate some swells that will, kind of radiate out from it to the Cabo San Lucas resort areas and maybe even the Baja of California and also, the Central American coastline and the California Gulf there. So certainly something to watch here over the next several days or so, but no land concern at this time. Now, what is of land concern? This is taking a look here at Invest 98L off the South Carolina and North Carolina coastlines here. Basically, this is also coming from the College DuPage, and we're taking a look here at the 500 millibar RAP analysis, the rapid refresh analysis here. And one thing you will notice here is we have a very broad elongated trough of low pressure through here. And if we bring up the radar here from Morehead City, you notice how there is a little bit of a cyclonic curvature, but what we have is a very broad trough axis that is kind of oriented from south to southeast across this area. And what this is eventually going to do is this is going to be able to focus on the southern end of this broader trough. This is going to be able to focus a concentrated area of vorticity within the deeper convection. If we pop back to the satellite here from right now, just a little bit ago, you notice how there was a little bit of a low analysis. Now, there was a bit of a mesolow that did kind of form within some of the broader convection and then drift out here and actually then impacted land and kind of, moved inland. Now we're starting to see what will likely be another center reformation right off the North Carolina coastline here and off of Wilmington, North Carolina, and the Outer Banks. This will likely concentrate itself from a broader energy area of just general troughiness and through here to more of a concentrated area of vorticity somewhere within this deeper convection. Now, where exactly this occurs is very hard to depict, and right now we're actually going to put on the surface plots here. But you do notice, and we'll speed this up here just a little bit, that there's kind of this area of general cyclonic turning in the atmosphere. You've got a lot of this turning that's kind of out here, some of the turning there, and turning out here. So there's an area of broad troughiness, an area of low pressure that's kind of concentrated from southeast to south to southeast. And this is eventually going to help to concentrate another area of circulation and then take over with cyclogenesis. As what's going to happen is this deeper convection is going to be able to tighten whatever circulation does form in that area and help to tighten it even further. And we likely see that occur here off the Cape Hatteras coastline here, the Outer Banks of North Carolina, and off of Wilmington in the Carolina coastline. This will likely be the preferred area for a center reformation to take place, and then eventually move off here over the next several days in some of the warmer water. And again, that's going to come in handy. We'll talk about here the warmer water in a minute, but the National Hurricane Center has now given 98L a 70% chance over the next 48 hours and 5 days, as this is going to be moving up from the Carolina coastline and it eventually coming up here closer to the northeastern states. So certainly portions of New York, New Jersey, Delaware even might have to pay attention to this. Again, might become a brief tropical storm, maybe some gusty winds, heavy rainfall. No significant impacts is expected at this time. Of course, in the tropics, anything can change. Not expected to be a hurricane. Could be a tropical storm, maybe no worse than a nor'easter type deal. But it is very interesting, nonetheless, that we will have to potentially contend with another record-setting event here with the earliest named F storm. The next name would be Faye on the list. And if Faye does form, it would be the earliest since 2005. So we will likely be breaking 2005 records once again. We beat it a couple days ago with Eduardo with the earliest named E storm, and now we might be doing it with the earliest named F storm. And again, the next name would be Faye. And this is really all before the deep tropics in the main development region really gets active. So we will be really watching this here over the next day or so. You can see this area of broad turning. And again, this is not our main area of low pressure. We will be seeing another area kind of form closer into this convection here. And again, you can already kind of see what we're trying to get here. Maybe some evidence of mid-levels, circulation out here off the Hatteras coastline. Maybe some evidence of that if we kind of zoom in. You can kind of see what might be some evidence of a, mid-level center of circulation that might be trying to develop in there. The most likely area, though, is going to be under this area of very deep convection that's out here right now, quite a bit a ways from the coastline, under all of this deeper convection that's out here. So we will be watching it and basically taking a look here at the sea surface temperatures coming off the NOAA NESDIS site. Again, basically, our system is actually located right in through about right here, and right in through here is basically the Gulf Stream. This runs the Gulf Stream in through here, an area of moving current of warmer water in the atmosphere, and again, this is going to set up for water temperatures to be about 28, 29 Celsius in this area. As you know, what will happen is 98L will eventually kind of traverse this warmer water, and even out and through here, you know, water temperatures, you know, are still a little bit favorable, you know, all the way up here, especially if this kind of rides the coastline a little bit like that. That's going to be, you know, kind of cutting it close to where it can or can't develop. But certainly the Gulf Stream is going to give this thing a little bit of a kick, and then certainly we will still have the water temperatures be about 26 to 27 Celsius as it continues up here closer to the you know, Delaware area in New York and you know, New Jersey. This will certainly kind of provide for more area favorability if this tracks a little bit closer to the coast in terms of the sea surface temperature profile, but might hinder it because of land interaction. And again, this is very close to land. It is expected to be very close to land, so how this actually evolves over the next day or so is going to be very closely monitored by radar and satellite. We will have recon going in tomorrow. It was canceled for today. We'll have it tomorrow. So again, you know, we might be contending with another 2005 record. But again, it just goes to show that the window of favorability is still increasing. And again, these systems off the coastlines that form like this, we talked about it in the early season, this can be a problem because it can form in very short order without very much lead time. So certainly something to watch here over the next few days or so. But the main impacts from this is going to be gusty winds, heavy rain, basically like a springtime nor'easter practically. Now, taking a look here in the future, this is coming from Eric Webb, Weber Weather on Twitter. This is the North American Multi-Model Ensemble record precipitation anomalies here from August to October of 2020. And again, what you're taking a look here is basically all just the record precipitation anomalies. And this is going from millimeters a day, I do believe, and the highest concentration there is 1. And you notice where that's focused, the main development region. And we're not really seeing a concentrated area of dryness over this area. So certainly this has my attention. Now, there is 2 interesting things here. Now, one of them is potential tracks. What this might be indicating is more of a recurve track and one that tracks closer to the Lesser Antilles and so on and so forth. Now, this is not saying where any systems develop, that's where they're going to go automatically. No, there's a lot more that comes down to it. However, the thing that I did see earlier, and I should have pulled it up, but I didn't, this is very close and similar to the way 2017 was with its tracks and its guidance out in the longer range. This is kind of showing some of the similarities of 2017. And if you remember how the 17 season was, is very busy, multiple significant hurricanes that took, you know, a track that didn't necessarily recurve. It impacted some sort of landmass before most systems recurved out there. So 2017, you know, in terms of the tracks, and this year is fairly uncanny. The one thing that is standing out and very concerning that's been different from all the other seasons, though, in the past, probably other than 05, is the precipitation anomalies that are excessively above average. And if we take a look at this, this again from Eric Webb, basically the North American model precipitation forecast for August to October of this year. Basically, Eric Webb points this out nicely. Drier here in the brownish shades and wetter in the greenish and turquoise shades. And this is just in a league of its own. I mean, we have not seen this, I believe, even in 2017. We did not see these precipitation anomalies be this far on the wetter side of the distribution, just off the charts in the main development region. And that's very concerning. You notice, I mean, there is no dry air to, you know, no dryness showing up in the model consensus this far out. This is basically all like 50 or so members of, you know, the North American multi-model consensus. And this is basically just blending it in, and this is the end result. You just get is very significant wetness, wetter than normal period in the main development region. And you notice even out here into the Gulf of Mexico, the Caribbean, Lesser Antilles, Southwestern Atlantic for that matter, some of it, this area is running just above the long-term average, and especially out here in the main development region. And I'm not trying to, cause any hype. I'm not trying to cause any panic or anxiety. What this is showing me, though, is that this is a very significant thing that we have to take into account. And yes, people need to start watching the deep tropics now. We're heading into that time of the year, and obviously with everything else going on, the last thing you really need is hurricanes. But if we didn't have hurricanes, we'd probably have something worse. So the best recommendation for me that I can give to you folks out there is to, take this seriously, but don't panic over it. Don't have anxiety over it. But stay weather aware, stay prepared, check in, for the latest updates. Certainly, we'll be doing a lot of updates here for the rest of the hurricane season, but also take this time to prepare. We are coming close now to reaching 6 named storms already this season. None of them have formed out here, but we have seen very strong tropical waves that have tried to get their origins out here in the main development region. I urge you, this is the time to prepare. This is the time to get serious and prepare for this upcoming hurricane season if you haven't already. This is not trying to hype anybody, not trying to make it a mountain out of molehill, but this is a very serious situation, and if this actually pans out to be correct, and we can all hope that this turns out to be a bust and I'm wrong too, we hope that can happen, but hope alone is not a preparedness tool. You need to understand where you're going to go in an event of an evacuation. How are you going to deal with everything else that's going on right now? How are we going, what medication, stuff like that, generators, food, extra water, stuff like that is something you guys need to think of now before, you're scrambling to the store, 2 days before a storm hits, and you don't want to be in that situation. So very important that now is the time to prepare. Now's the time to take this serious if you weren't already, before we really dive into the real significant part of the hurricane season, which is coming up very soon. And to take, kind of a not so, to add insult to injury, basically, to take another look at this is coming from tropicaltidbits.com and the GEFS ensemble mean MSLP anomaly, or anomalies here. This is the mean ensembles here, and you notice what we're really looking at here is this blue is very indicative of higher pressure, nothing really going on. This area, though, is a very interesting area. This is out to hour 72, and this is showing what we're taking a look here is a lowering of the pressures in this region. We're actually taking a look at the lower pressures, and you can see that the lows appear in red and the highs appear in blue. And so all of this area is an area of high pressure, but right here is an area of lower pressure to the east of the Lesser Antilles and north and east of Barbados. Now, in the short term, obviously the National Hurricane Center has not put out an area of disturbance, as of right now. However, it is a little bit interesting because this is coming from an area in the tropics. And, if we what we'll actually do here is go to a quick sector view of the Western Atlantic Basin, if we can. We'll take a look here at the Western Atlantic Basin, and I should have had this pulled up before. But you can really see what we're talking about. This is actually our tropical wave axis out through here that we're kind of talking about. We're talking about this area right in through here, that over the next few days or so, this is going to gradually try to move off towards the north and west here, and something might come out of it. And we're also seeing one heck of a strong tropical wave coming off here, just off the coast of Africa, south and east of the of the Cabo Verde Islands. So, this raises my interest because of the main fact that what's going to end up happening is we might get a little area of disturbance out here that tries to lower some of its pressures, and we will have to watch this over the next few days or so. So certainly that will be something to watch as we kind of progress on throughout time. And real quickly, I did kind of want to take a look at this. This I thought was pretty interesting. Kind of inspired from Ben Noel Weather. This is basically the North American model, precipitation anomalies, basically. Old run versus new run. The old run is basically out here in the more, kind of faded away, and the new run is kind of overlapping it. Basically, you go from the dry colors right here to the wet colors over here. And you notice, so the old run had a lot of areas concentrated out and through kind of this area right and through here. Kind of this area was particularly wetter above the long-term average in that area, with some below normal south of the Cabo Verde Islands. The new run, interestingly enough, has two distinct areas. One that's out here, kind of a recurve pattern, and one out here in the southwestern Atlantic and Caribbean and Gulf of Mexico. So very intriguing to see that this model is still kind of picking up on much of these same processes that will be taking place here over the next several months or so as we begin to head into, the month of August and then September. Obviously, this is going to be a very busy hurricane season, and there's no doubt about that at this time. And to add more insult to injury, this is the European 850 zonal wind anomalies. And basically, we're taking a look at July 13th to July 18th, days 6 to 10. And basically, what you're looking, this is from tropicaltidbits.com, by the way. Your purplish here is indicating your easterly winds, and your, reddish is indicating westerly winds. And my goodness, westerly winds across all of the deep tropics without any impeded easterly winds at all up here. So this would favor a cooling in the subtropics, warming in the deep tropics. Can I ask for any, can I say anything more, really? Can you ask for more of an insult to injury than this? And again, this is not to hype anything up or make it a mountain out of a molehill, but again, we jump back to these, sea surface temperatures, and these are already quite a bit above the long-term average. So this is only going to increase the sea surface temperatures across the area quite anomalously so, and actually might lead to significant warming of the deep tropics with time respect. So certainly this is going to be a very significant thing as we continue on throughout the next several days or so, that if we get this very strong westerly wind burst, that's going to really strengthen and help to anomalously warm, potentially significantly warm the deep tropics across the whole entire deep tropics and main development region, even into the Caribbean and Barbados and the Lesser Antilles. So this is a problem because not only does it increase the sea surface temperatures, but there's also these westerly winds create more of a cyclonic curvature in the atmosphere, a cyclonic turning in the atmosphere at about 5,000 feet in the 850 millibar level. And this is going to promote a better chance for tropical cyclone genesis, basically basin-wide. This is going to promote less Saharan air events. This is going to warm the tropics. This is going to increase the background vorticity in the atmosphere and allow for better cyclogenesis to occur. So any of these tropical waves that come off after, really the next couple of days or so really have to be monitored after this time. Is the burst going to last forever? No. But it's very substantial, and it's something we have to take note of, and we will be watching it over the next several days or so. Now, with all of that being said, this is the 12C GFS forecast from tropicaltidbits.com. Basically, 850 millibar vorticity, spinning the atmosphere about 5,000 feet off the ground. What we're really taking a look here is this is actually 98L out here that's likely to become Tropical Storm Faye or Subtropical Storm Faye over the next few days or so. But you do notice that, we're really not seeing anything in the main development region, but there's tropical waves, and you notice, and this is really looking way out in time here, so we're not trying to make everything literal here. There's a little bit of a wave axis in through here. Now, this is hour 2:46, so we're not going any further beyond that. We're not going any further beyond that, but the signs are there for something to be taken advantage of. And now to 98L. This is the 500 millibar geopotential height from tropicaltidbits.com. Basically, you're looking at 18,400 feet in the atmosphere right now. And basically, this is your, basically you're taking a look at your height anomalies. This whole area is this area of persistent high pressure across this area with the strongest high pressure appearing in this very dark red. That's kind of the 600 decameter height potential there. And again, what you're really seeing is that you notice how what's going to be happening with 98L. This is current right now. We have this big ridge of high pressure kind of stemming all across the deep tropics at this point into the Caribbean. But there is a tad bit of an area of kind of weakness where this might be able to kind of pull just slightly, ever so slightly away. And what actually ends up happening, you see that kind of low jump, a center reformation is likely. Now, here's where things become interesting. So you have a weakness in this ridging axis right here because you're getting this little bit of a low pressure system and kind of this overall troughiness that's going to be occurring over the Canadian prairies over the next few days as this generally heads off towards the east-northeast here. But what's also happening is you notice the ridging of high pressure is building to the south of this and then over top of the system. So basically what you're left with is a very slow moving system, but you do have some alleyway to kind of pull this further off towards the north. And that's exactly what happens in the GFS forecast. It does tighten it up into a, about 1,004 millibar low, but you notice by the time it's getting pulled north because of this troughiness of low pressure, this kind of trough axis that's kind of digging in through here. So you have lowering in the heights across here, but you also have strengthening in the heights that are out in here that is pushing this basically then off towards the north. So this is not expected to get far out into the tropics out here in the far south, in the far northwestern Atlantic. So this really isn't going to have that much time to really significantly intensify and organize. So at best, again, you could have, maybe a really weak tropical, depression or storm or subtropical depression or storm that might come into, the area in the northeast here over the next few days or so. But then eventually this moves inland because you're getting this trough axis down here. A new area of low pressure eventually forms out here near Michigan. And then you eventually get this, area of high pressure to kind of build over top of, or, behind the storm, forcing it to the north, getting pulled by this trough axis. So again, maybe, again, some heavy rain, gusty winds and squally conditions, but you're not really going to see hurricane force winds. Think of it as a very mild nor'easter, basically. Some wind, some, precipitation, not snow this time. But, some rain, some wind, some increase in surf and maybe some storm surge, but we're kind of stretching it there because this is not really expected to be that strong of a system. And one thing I did find interesting is, again, this is the GFS normalized mid-level mean sea level pressure anomalies. And just notice that the whole deep tropics out here remains, in this area of consistent low pressure over the next 5 days and beyond. And what that suggests to me is that tropical waves are going to keep coming off of Africa. We're going to see a reduction in the trade winds across the area. We're going to see the overall favorability start to increase across the deep tropics throughout the next several days or so. So we will be kind of watching that. The European forecast model for 98L out here to the next 24 hours, a little bit slower than the GFS forecast, a little bit slower, but eventually does tighten this up. And by hour 72, this is approaching, Boston and, Long Island and those areas out here in the Northeast. So this will certainly be something to watch as we go on throughout the next several days or so. New York, those areas, we'll have to watch this. And again, one of the main kind of competing factors, this is the European 500 millibar geopotential anomaly. Again, 8,400 feet in the atmosphere. And again, what you're seeing is much of the same. You have this little bit of a trough axis in through here with a strengthening high pressure ridge out here. Basically, your big heat dome, if you will. This is also going to help to keep Tropical Storm Christina away from the Cabo San Lucas resort areas and, any coastlines down there. But this will help to kind of steer 98L further to the north while kind of working simultaneously with this area of trough axis, because you notice how eventually this trough axis kind of really digs in here with this area of high pressure kind of moving this off to the north, and you're kind of getting that steering component So there really should not be much in the way of anything going on over the next several days or so. But again, you might be able to kind of squeeze out a brief named storm. Again, the next named storm would be Tropical Storm Faye, and we'll be watching that here over the next several days. And just the MSLP anomalies, once again, this area remains pretty much below average in terms of the MSLP anomalies over the next few days or so to weeks. So I'm telling you, we got a long road ahead of us, and it's almost time. So with that, I'm going to leave you with a little bit of our promo from yesterday. Hope you all have a great rest of your afternoon and evening. I am Michael O'Malley. Here is the promo, and I will see you guys back here then tomorrow afternoon. Stay safe, everyone.